Bonua will tell us what that means. So without doing much, I'll just move on to Bonua. But Bajanimbo Kelansi Diamani Kankola Domaninko Meaning Session means Sotokan. Ousman Sonko trial ning aning victim soul involvement in the trial, victim soul la mabe trial onyinto ani ila for inata arrive ning judgment la yemin nari wolem Ousman Sonko la judgment karumbe ala ne Ousman Sonko la mosa foga dabe crime soul kono mini gena hinosta Gambia jang karoni Ousman Sonko damato fodron ibe male basically, right? So akumayata bakele ko victim soul from Gambia jang e keta molti le mini ala ye Swiss court ni mako ile puruka in case ata kiti sota akola min keta a 20-year sentence, right? Yeah, so andi fadu kamara bijanne ate fana mu victim molti mi yalon ka dabe trial nyintola tata nung Switzerland le a participate a trial nyintole mosa for opportunity soul minimum sota nung Gambia pour victim soul fon ye participate in the trial wo ma fa holale I mean ngama wala fana mbati na mbe understanding ke ko munem fana mu ku mayati pour victim soul fon min yalon ko itolle fon man torata e dietara nyin kitiyol kono it have me like a victim centered approach. So circumstances leading to the Sonko's arrest, wolen call mini bulata Sonko la arresto Kenya kono ikatanya di le form futata wo temboto. Also Trial International la involvement, how Trial International was involved in the case, in victim soul and plaintiff soul pour ka case nim bill. Ye case bill nyaadi le fact soul soto nyaadi le ye investigation soul ke nyaadi le foyela evidence soul soto. Also assistance mi alon ko wole provide ta pour plaintiff soul mako yoro min provide ta pour plaintiff soul wara case fon la bonwa lebe o discourse la bi bonwa leng Trial International lawyer la definitely be based in Switzerland, so it will da be case ni kono. So the other person min fanam bije woleng Anina Mulis fanan da be lawyer le kono min alon Sonko trial ning from a plaintiff's attorney's perspective woleng ko from a lawyer perspective, like a prosecuting lawyer, right? From a plaintiff's lawyer's perspective, victim lawyer perspective. Ate fanambe wo kachale kala mole, but munatin na fanang sanji mwang soto instead of life imprisonment. Kar mo jamal bije safo munatin na baylo si life imprisonment soto. Ousman Sonko man life imprisonment soto. Bari coming after nyame luala go nyama ntol dol manke lawyer te bari nga loyal soto janne soybe wo fana explain na mole pour faham rosi ke wo ko la baake and then also next steps in the case munemu simfanyal de mininyanta tala going forward. Anina, you're online, but I hope you've got my English submissions. This one is exclusively Mandinka. Yeah, so going on, we'll definitely move into facts and issues of Trial International in this whole process. You will be talking to us about the circumstances leading to Sonko's arrest, right? How Trial International was involved with victims and plaintiffs to build the case, but also would like to hear about further assistance that was provided during the course of the case.
Yeah.
Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mohammed. I believe so. We will have somehow a live translation so everyone can understand. First of all, really important for me to stress and to thank the Solo Sandeng Foundation for the organization of this session, as well as thanking the victims, the survivors who are here, and also all the ones who are not. Because of course without them there would have been no case possible. So very important to thank them for their courage. National believes that these kind of sessions are very important because of course things happened far away in Switzerland in this case, but the most important is that the Gambians, you all, and the Gambian public in general can understand really what went on in Switzerland.
Right. So I can explain some of the translation of Kelala is a movie discussion from moving forward. So I can explain wole munema kumayati wadum follow atebe tenturo kala mol mini contributor mini ni mini be mako do ko nyinto wole Solo Sandeng Foundation ti pour ka futa nyin tembola ani fanan ka nyin forum organize ani do ko mini be den ngala comme nga audio mini play no because kumayata le ko nyin ko court case nyin be kan very far away le Switzerland para kumayata ko mol mini be Gambia fana ya ko kala mata kada be kan
Thank you. So let's start with the beginning, how it all started. So some of you might know that Ousman Sonko was dismissed from office at the end of 2016. I think it was September 2016, and very quickly fled to Europe to seek asylum.
Yeah, so 2016, I'm going to 2016, like Ousman Sonko. Botaman secundaro kabla botaman secundaro kataba hedron aborda dara Switzerland so proke mabuji akabeno wallet.
So he first went to Sweden to seek asylum, but because he had received a visa during his professional action to Switzerland for his asylum request to be investigated.
Ako follow jita dame follow in Sweden ti. Kobar kabra jita Sweden bari anene visa soto le mi along kabrabe do ko la masakunda volta o visa soto Switzerland visa but Sweden kol nata ya rifa praeta Sweden barabe asylum eta Switzerland barabe asylum nyinol so ala Switzerland taketa ten.
So I think he arrived in Switzerland at the end of 2016, maybe very early 2017, and that's a key moment for the proceedings, because that's only from the moment when Ousman Sonko was on the territory that the Swiss could prosecute him.
2016 labandulato wolen waranto 2016 followed lado wolto Ousman Sonko futata no Switzerland ako bari ka bring for abe wato minabo territory wolem ko kabram adunta Swiss territory otomalen Swiss nata no ko kugalo wolanda.
And at this moment, Trial International didn't really have any deep knowledge of what he would have done, what went on in the Gambia under Jammeh. But we were informed in January 2017 by a journalist that he was in an asylum center in Switzerland. So that's how we got the information that he was there.
Ako Trial International malo no minketano. Waranto kuol minga warate kuol minga no Gambia ko minka belo e molo no bari ko lawyer fanko journalist ole nate inform kaita ni lako nyimbe asylum campo in Switzerland otumole nata longo oton abe asylum le seekan in Switzerland otumole nata kalamoto itol kalamoto tala kuola otumole.
And so from this moment we decided to build a case. So that was January 17. Because in Switzerland, to open a case, you need to give the prosecutor reasonable suspicions that crimes were committed. We decided to look on the internet first on official reports, what went on in the Gambia under Jammeh, to try to explain the context, general context, to the prosecutor, and also to link Ousman Sonko with several several crimes that he was at the time alleged to have committed.
Ako so kabring woketa bring kabina ta long ko Ousman Sonko be asylum seeking la Switzerland. Trial International nataka case bill about trial nina. Wotuma fana ibo kala no nyaadi le tol Switzerland ni ko be case bill la wara ni la fa case bill la. Foi se emi itandi prosecutor la ko nyimu kullete min yalo sototale amaria nyin le kenu waranto nyin le be kiri laftaka kiti ni nyila butonga ko e bo le kono ende ni nata nyin official report so to coming call mi mbota tiara sidla waranto min yalo ko be fokat ne ko nyi yenyi ne ke Gambia buti to fana nata suji wolle kan pour isa explain no prosecution ye munebe kiri waranto nyi mujuma.
So remember that at the time, the TRRC hadn't even started its work. It was very early 17. So we had to rely on other sources, such as NGOs reports, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch had reported on the Gambia already, just like the United Nations. And these kind of material we used in the complaint to denounce Ousman Sonko in Switzerland.
Ako nimbe hakilo ba kam fana wo wato la 2017 because TRS starting am 2018 but 2017 wotuma TRS man commencé no mo sa fono go imita testimony so la no mi ya lonko wala ya fono go nyine keta so nata minke wolem ko e report so leta mini ya lonko wala bota organization sol bulu like human rights organization sol mini be ko trial international then nata o report so le dajale o report so le nata wala ke nyokan wala ya yitan di munebe kerin no Gambia anon to fo Ousmane Sonko dabe mun kulle kono je because o report mi adu o time dum comme ngafa nyame Ousmane Sonko la ko be faraman sari mbakele Gambia tilimbali ala ko.
So the complaint was built in a few days and filed on the 25th of January, and it was judged strong enough by the prosecutors because they decided to arrest him very quickly on the day after, on the 26th.
Ako kataba ke nata o case bill wala nyama ngama yet tili dankan neta nata case nyimbila brinkawi case bill ya file wala ka di prosecutor la 25th of January 2017 wolte yo di prosecutor fanan kabra yoje fanan jikitale ko ada sontale ko nyi mutilimbal ya bal min ya lon ko isotale woto wo kamala 26th of January wala wo lungo fon somo ye Ousmane Sonko arrest wolte.
So of course the arrest was a key moment in the case, and just to remind you that Ousmane Sonko then remained in pre-trial detention until his trial that took place 7 years afterwards.
Bunun kabria arrest watu mina ko keta ku foraman sari mbag mol jamal ya kala mutale bari fanan atuta wo mutaro le kono. Hello Sal. Yeah. Okay.
Hi.
Just go on.
You're unmuted. Could you try?
Role kono nyim pre-trial ka me pre-trial detention. Amarata wole kono fo sanji worowula fo janni kitiyo be kela fo kitiyo be kuntula.
And the early stages of the proceedings are also very important because you need more evidence material to keep the person in detention. So, and that's where I think Trial International and the civil society in general played an important role. I will explain why.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, let me just explain. Hello, Sal.
I want to say my
Can you mute him, please? Yes. Mutaro kono mutaro nying abijele barento min kumayata mutaro la wato la wolem ko e nyanta ka sede andirol le soto kam me evidence nyanta sede andirol le soto la min yalon ko wolle batinna la case ni yelo ako wudu wo sede andir kuolto trial international la do ko semba ma be wolto aning fanan NGO fanan do ko semba ma be civil society aka bena wala explain la sa.
Well, basically, you have to understand that the authorities, they can't go suddenly to the Gambia and investigate the crimes. They have to go through a very formal process that takes some time. So we were a bit afraid that the difficulty to gather evidence would make the case weaker. So that's why our Trial International decided to travel into the Gambia very quickly after filing the complaint because it was easier for us to travel and to meet the civil society in the Gambia as well as potential witnesses and survivors, of course.
Yeah, ko kamala because ni try ni court ni more put in detention and ni bet evidence like told min kumayata je wolem ko itole nyasotol nung yesido Ousmane Sonko la victim solti bari fanan ko masakundate case bill no to sino la odla ya fa be case bill comme prosecution to kala no so budi tolla do ko na rawol to na tan na Gambia ruining CSO civil society organization solti nyoma koy ye victim sol fanan je min yalo ko wolle daba case ni to pour isi case ni bill no akol fo wala kete tolla siloti kana na Gambia ani fanan ning CSO le do ko ke o karola.
So from the Gambia, it was not me, my former colleagues started meeting survivors and realized that a lot of people were affected by what Ousman Sonko was alleged to have done at the time. And from what I've seen in our papers, the first complaints from individuals, Gambian individuals, were filed in April 17, so quite quickly after the filing of the complaint. From April, in June, October 2017, so still within the 6 months after the opening of the case. And just to make a point, but put them in relation with Swiss lawyers, qualified Swiss lawyers, just like Anina. So we don't do representation work, but we leave it to the Swiss lawyers working with their own clients to file the complaints, to prepare the complaints, and represent them before the prosecutor and the court.
Yeah. Ako butu yaminke wolem kabri da wona Gambia wolto ye survivor soul mit ani victim soul mini ala Ousman Sonko la victim soul la muti mini ala ko man torata je butun kabri nata wolje inata itol fana nata ben cool fe mi ala ko wolto yaaji ko nyim plaintiff nyim victim soul siata le bari Ousman Sonko la force complaint mini ala ko wole keta la ko la formal complaint wo keta nung in April 2017 le Gambia jang wala force complaint mi yalon ko wala filta Ousman Sonko la ko butun kabri wo be caring itol la lawyer wara mam victim soul survivor soul me itol fon me ta wara ni ku ke bari tale ye identify den ye ning loyal londinyo la mi yalon ko wala professional loyalty mini fon be nim ko wala butu itol manke mo mini fon keta loyalty bari itol ye silo kele pour wol victim soul ni loyal so go keno.
So basically, from this point, Trial International, well, from the beginning, Trial International was the first denunciator, but then the organization doesn't play an active role and has no rights in the procedure. We leave it to the plaintiffs who have the right to access the file, to ask questions to Sonko, and to file evidence in the case.
Ako hani bi tolla load la ware tolla ma be nyim ko ay don bla so to coming for itol butun kabring itol yakata fo ye Ousman Sonko la ko lankene ma yalon mol ya bula le plaintiff soul wala victim soul fon de mini yalon mini ko plaintiff wala mol mini be dabe tarra case nyinto ayate tol fana mo mol mini complain o nyike ka fo le plaintiff soul. So budung ako wol itol fanan yaminke silol deda deni nata wol bla ining loyal waranto itol fanan na rad momenti komen ka mabe case nyindo waranka Ousman Sonko nyi lole deda dron pour wosi sotono mintuta akamunde tol mang damam bla case to ka fa Ousman Sonko try bari ye silo ke victim soul aning plaintiff soul pour ye participate no case minto.
And in the same vein, is not replacing the prosecuting authorities. Yes, we meet with potential witnesses, we meet with survivors, but we do not interview them formally. So they had to come to Switzerland to be heard. And they were at that moment supported by their own lawyers.
Yeah. Ako trial hani bi la itolla do ko nyimbe itolla mabe nyin case to hani sang amanke ko itolla fon keta prosecutor to coming after nyame prosecutor bi jele so itolla min silo minke wolem ko victim soul and wala plaintiff soul ye nyaaso to pour be futano la nyame dulato mi yalon ko nyin kitio itol si mabe no kitio to nyame wolem ko ini loyal fon ye si mini fon mu loyalty wol fon ye interview yela factual sort of right then yeta yo present court so wolen aka min yitani hani sa wolem ko itol fango manke moldi min yala wolle keta loyalty bari tol mo organization sulti bari loyal fango bi jele professional loyal min yala wolle akota budi tol min ke o silo to wolen ka silo di victim soul la waranto plaintiff soul la ibe futala no nyamen Switzerland ini ye participate court process nyinto right.
So they have their legal advices given by their lawyers. On our side, we try to support them as best as we could to have their travel, to have their stay in Switzerland as nice as possible, and most important, we were making sure that everyone who were asking or who would need psychological support would benefit from that, because we of course don't want anyone to be re-traumatized when they have to tell their story before the prosecutor.
So coming for all ko itol hani saying itol la makoiro be keta min coming ko itol keta makoir lalati instead of anything else. Olem ko itol yem mimbe ke olem ka makoiro ke molla be futala no nyameng trial dula para kana dang futala damala because jama bije itol be mi mo victim molti ning ning kol be kere adum be participate kanje mostly account traumatized no le like akamol hakili janja mo sabu no mo like afmi trauma. So I told him in create wolenka psychosocial support was if I'll provide me along about tinalale hata you be participate kan in process over para kana atina ila ni ku yale muruna waranto pol mi yala wala be mentor ako bi to lamma ko ro minti wod la wolem ka make sure ñu ne futa ñameng Switzerland ani fana e la so de be stela dame but wo be kam pour muneng pour isi participate no court case ni saje pour mi be kelang ay ta itol ko nyala da ke nyala karon ni be mola kafami ne buka mola kurto suma nga koma so itol fana yemin try wala kurga aje ko molbe futa dulato then inyanta min kala no wosi keno so atra itol manke prosecution ti bari ni ye mako e pour ye futa isa keno nyame yes.
So for example Fatou, she came twice in Switzerland, once to tell her story before the prosecutor and second time to tell her story before the court. So all that is of course very moving, and we try to make that her journey to justice is the easiest as possible. So that would be somehow a holistic support we try to provide.
Yeah. So comme hani saying wolem ko coming for example Fatou tata wala anti Fatou tata Switzerland twice para ala tabe kilimo mu pour court famole wato min court case be keri hani say wo be kono itolla mako ro mo minti wala itolla lon kam minti wala pour ka kata ko ki Gambian victims soul ye access
and aside of that, of course, we continued our own investigation, and we went back several times in the Gambia over the years. And we were able also to suggest either the lawyers or the prosecutor directly new evidence. And for example, the TRC hearing were very interesting for some parts of the case. The work that the civil society did in Gambia, for example, ANECED, providing summaries of the hearings and all of that, were very interesting. And so the most interesting parts were shared with the prosecutors.
Kami fofu na wale tola do ko continue tale pour ka jibe be ko soto la nyameng mini alon ko wolle be kala sedi andirol wala wolle be silo itandi la molla ko nyinlen ko ti mini be kirin no ako especially coming documental mini alon ko wolle be caring o time to ka be ñu wato mi na fana wayata let's say TRRC be on le already. So organisation mi je ko ANECED digest sort of mi alon ko kaitan le po mi be ketanun tiara sudla for almost every thematic area. So what documents if all news articles and documents dol it all fanan sujita wala kan pour ka in case ni ngena sembentu ya dajal pour evidence la carola.
Yeah.
So we continue ta kana jang always kana visiting la investigation kana kela investigation continue hani bi pour ka case ni bil ka tonyal gena soto pour member build la case ni to. Yeah.
And I would like to stress that the TRC work at this stage was key for the prosecutors and for the judges, because that's, amongst other evidence, that's what allowed the prosecutor to understand really what went on under Jammeh. And so at least for the contextual explanations, it was absolutely key to have the TRC report. So another occasion to congratulate the work that has been done in the Gambia. Very key for the proceedings.
Yeah. Jama bi je itol prosecution walanto itol evidence min sotondino ye kuol min sotondino jamal bi ja ko TRC la report warento ila do ko e parce que siro min adi mu kuol min funtindi kan ako mayata no ayetol fanam mako e bakele ila o investigation so like issue all built from Minla.
Yeah. And I don't want to be too long, but basically aside of this investigating role, this support to plaintiff's role, like I said in the beginning, I think one of our objective was to spread the word of the proceedings, the investigation, and the trial in the Gambia. So we tried to, we were following the trial, we have been trying to take notes, to publish some reports, so that everyone in the Gambia could also use that to spread the word about the proceeding.
So I can explain wole mitol fanan kabring itamitan stage la inata min fanan ke wolem ko ka continue ka kalamutandiro ke molla sa commune be Gambia especially about mune be caring be tembe jumalto coming ko ning haglo ba kan wato min indictment woni nata force ngari be trial international ye communication bondi le ka itandiko Ousman Sonko has been indicted for these crimes. So akawole foten min ko itol fana ye continue ta pour ka mol kalamutandi ko la min be kekan Switzerland around wo case ninna bari jama sa ko min sujita ibe kalamutandiro ke la Gambiano la nyame pour ya long mun be caring case ninto otumol.
And I would I'd just like to add one more thing I didn't say before. During the course of the investigation, of course, the prosecutors and the judge, of course, afterwards, the authorities are very much independent. So they decide which fact to investigate, especially. And when it comes to Ousman Sonko, Trial International tried to show Sonko's role in the migrants massacre, for example, which is a dramatic event amongst other in the Gambia. But the prosecutors decided not to investigate this aspect, and we couldn't really do much against that. This said, they investigated other crimes that took place between 2000 and 2016 that led to an indictment in 23 and the trial of Ousman Sonko and his conviction in 24. And on that, I will just leave Anina give more details.
Right. Akanyim blam fa kumayata bakela ko hani saying Swiss prosecution they're too independent. I can explain ko wole tol new wol mang suji fen fame coming it all buka wol direct wol buget all direct well wol sit all direct but it all buka wol direct wolem ko wol lafta coming investment sotono warante si coming kisi no yeto nya sabandi nda ko wala ika ni wo issue si fale investigate example of that is come I can explain ya katale pour aka make sure ya facts yitandi because come it all coming ka kuma kangol sindi prosecution la so ito liya katale pour ka Ousman Sonko la mabe anala bulo war massacre nyinto mimu migrants la massacre pour ka Ousman Sonko la lo la yitandi prosecution la je sa je si wo fanan ko kisi no si kitindiro keno ko la akobari prosecution man na wo ko time man na kisi ro ke o ko la hani bi make o ko la bari yake kudol lale mini alon ko inata evidence soto wolle la waranto ya kitindi wolle bari wo fanan kono kudol fanan bijele mini alon ko ngamera kabring summary nyimbe kiri ba explain kanko wol fanan mu kulen mi alon ko prosecution man na wo kul kitindi bari e kudol kitindi la yeah so ako saying about bulala janne then Anina fanan be online le will now skip to Anina and have her also contribution. So thank you very much Bonwa ngamera mbe jam fatale bari at least ñina ma na faati kunun si understand no mo be sa understand no angale moy laal ni man ni ka moy laal be understand la ngamel right so we'll move on to Anina. Thank you very much Bonwa for that account. It's quite detailed so Anina, we'll
think the sound was muted.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
So also thank you very much from my side for the invitation to the Fatima Translation.
Yes, please, Fatima.
Anino po aliag Solo Sandeng Foundation kaya barangkara ada pula di program kenyameng aning makontak tabate po katarajan ani na sebe di amla tele munung kulmadi sisa la lawyer tenim binta jamba aning plaintiff tol fana atabe di amla karo min na waleng muni atinna kitiyo comme Mohamed ya ko nyame ye sanyi muwandi Ousman Sonko la imal life diala anin san kitiyo teta mune be nyaato mune be kereje so abe di amla watni watinte be kan solo kel wala barak anina
and I have already also mentioned it several times to my clients and the other plaintiffs that it has been or is a huge privilege from my side to work on this case, and I am humbled by the courage and the strength all the plaintiffs have shown throughout the procedure in the courtroom and, of course, before that in the events leading up to this trial.
Ako fanang ako bring kitiyo nyimbekela aning kitiyo tambiring of fanang ka ko moli ko nyuma e kontan ko ti bake aning faranseo kuti kaje ko aning Gambia friends aning ila guys don't laugh at my manding I'm trying to find the word but I told him
organizations in Gambia that have greatly supported with gathering evidence, supported with providing information. I can speak from my perspective and case also, it would have been impossible to, from the people on this Zoom and present in the room in Gambia. And I'm very sad that I'm not there with you, as I assume.
Ako fanang abafula kafuli mbe Gambia ani victimol ani official mbe Gambia ani journalist funyoma isaje ko to loyal isa we use no court ka Ousman Sonko kitindi akabe diala en na pour katara Gambia ka to Gambia ko le ma ko ro ke ba ke nyin kesto bari steering Gambia.
What I can imagine is that one of the challenges in with universal jurisdiction can be that you have all these cases in different jurisdictions, which also have their own procedural rules, their own procedural codes and different, or to get an understanding of all these differences, I can imagine is challenging at times.
Aka ayalom fanang ko pudol bije mi yalon ko keta puti mi yalon ko keta bata ko ti domandi mol min yalon ko be Gambia wala victim mol ti anim plentiful kaje ko universal jurisdiction cases so be dolbe Switzerland dolbe Germany jang ila court system ol fanang ibe fatata Kotu ko fa ko victim or fa wosi torani domani wala ke batan domanding ka information also to nyame.
So this is why I will just give a brief introduction to the Swiss criminal system, how the trial worked.
Akonya fana yatin abe time domandin tala dorom pour ka Switzerland la court system ikado ko ke nyame pour ka explain mole pour nga understand comme Swiss is la court system o kata nyameng anin trial o nyum fanang akol be data no nyame.
Because, for example, contrary to the German legal system where the bylaw case took the prosecution's office, in Switzerland is much longer and has more relevance and weight than also in the court proceedings or in the hearings as such.
Ako ka jele ko Switzerland ni Germany katara nyola nyaawo nya bari la court system ol ka du ko ke nyaamen amake kilenti ikaje ko Switzerland Germany jang by lo benu ndame je ya kitindi dame jang investigation o man jam fabake bari biri ba kitindi ro jam fata ñomale kaje ko Ousmane Sonko samba kot wo time wo jam fata bake kadu ngala ko sanyi sanje wala tabi in 2016 fo in 2023 len a kiti in 2024 ka kiti nata tay so wo jam fata bake le Switzerland anim fana tol investigation o ñi wo fana kuma yata bake le trial o ñi to na kuma seta.
So as Benoit has already explained or presented, the preparation or the investigation phase with the Federal Prosecution's Office in the case against Ousmane Sonko took 7 years.
Kisi roti Ousmane Sonko la crime molto anala victim wala mantora kuol min bela in molkan atata fo sanji worola.
During these 7 years, many witnesses have been heard in Switzerland and also in Gambia. The prosecution flew to Gambia, held hearings in Gambia, and we followed the hearings back in Switzerland. We sat in a room looking at a screen, just like you are following me now.
Ako fanang ñing kisi ro biring abekela dol mi modo interview Switzerland mi yalon ko se interview noje dol interview ta Gambia je minimantano Switzerland wolen ko ito loyal beno Switzerland jang and courtroom o e camera le keten kon tol nal tol be diam ka nyamenten then wole explanation okay wole le ito pana information o be di gala isaje ko kiti yo ni tol pana ya follow from Switzerland ko nga fale nyamen tol pana ba follow ka nyamen so.
And in Switzerland, victims who decide to join the case as private plaintiffs have the right to legal representation, and the legal representation then has the right to join all the hearings that take place in a case. So the lawyers of the victims, we took part in the hearings of Ousmane Sonko himself, of all the witnesses, of all themselves.
Ako Switzerland panang momo yalong ko victim ole muiti case to ni anati koto ya decide ko elofta tarla case nyin tole comme antifatu kamara nyol ben jaal nyame defo ngam pa right soto pour ka representation oza wala ka loyal soto banko nyimbe min tala ya di molla nyin loyal fana mi mi tolti anina nyolanin dol itol fana right soto pour ka tara kiti bungo kono wati wo wati ni kiti yo be mol interview la wala sedolti wala yatina fana tolli sedol be fana la moyle Ousmane Sonko fama birabe diam le tol bi jele ani sedol mi yalon ko be interview tan in case to.
And the legal representatives do not only have the right to be present, but they also have the right to ask questions on behalf of the plaintiffs, on behalf of their clients.
Ako fana manke doron ko nyin loyal min yalon ko la victim wali de wala representer il nyantal doron ka si court kono bari Switzerland system o be nyame ya right so tor pour ka nyinin ka role fananke ka Ousmane Sonko nyinin ka wala ka nyin sedol fanan nyinin ka on behalf of it all victim o ka ko ni anina munta lawyer de ka benun amuno on kumadi la lawyer nyame ay nyinin ka dol soto on kumadi lafta min nyinin kala asafono anina ye Ousmane Sonko nyinin kala wala ay seda dol nyinin kala ko wo nyanto fanan be lawyer le Switzerland.
And then all the records of these hearings and all the other evidence, such as evaluations of technical devices and other evidence that was provided by the clients, by us lawyers, by trial, which is the basis of the trial.
Ako fana ni kisi roketa ikaje ko pujamale kisi kaytolu min nene safeta telefono kono kacala min keta je safo ko maybe Ousmane Sonko e kacha sifaro ko min yalon ko ya tinna mol yalon ka nyin ku kurngol lek wala safela je yewol be tale ye ka funyoma ya ke file oti anu nyin file kiti yo nyin nata ka sababu kana ka ke wala watni kon.
And then this is, again, I'm just saying this, I hope I'm not boring you with this a bit technical. information, but I'm saying this just to highlight differences to the bylaw case that was held in Germany, because the file, all these records, all the evidence, everything that was gathered and investigated in the investigative phase by the prosecutor is handed over to the trial, to the court, and can be considered in the trial and in the judgment.
Ako aya mira ko amantara albatande kuma jamal la baraka nyimmi be explain tem pour dorong mole faham roke ka lonko system mo be jamani e baylo kitin dami ani system mo be Switzerland e mankling Switzerland kono nyin kisi tu mo mi yalon ka sanji woro wala ta ya mi mo mini kala mutaje ya mi mo min safe nyoye kafu nyoma ikawatale ya di ni ko kiti wato sita sa parce que investigation o ning trial no ning tumol manke kilinti idulal manke kilinti loyal min be kile manke kilinti fana ikaje ko investigation of file ni ko be ta ya di ni loyal min kana kiti yo tei so fanan isa lawyer min kana kiti yo tei so we use nole as evidence wala kibarolti e minu be ta e be dajale no pour.
So in Switzerland, not every person providing testimony needs to be heard personally in court, but your office is enough.
Ako Switzerland fanang amanke momo victim ka ko kontel la takela suedoti by force lam pour ye illa moy court kono ye nay sindi ye nyininka bari fana min use no wala nyin kaytolti ani kiskisirol nin kibaro min beta ya ka funyoma ko ka use no le court kono so hani yela kumo ya fole kaytol bala ya safe bari men ne sindi ke nyininka la court kono yemin be fo kayto kono hani biu fana be court bulle bo fana use la ko kitiya.
So this is why we had in January this year 3 weeks of trial, of court hearings in Switzerland in Bellinzona in front of the Federal Criminal Court, which is for Swiss circumstances a very long trial period, but for other jurisdictions it's a relatively short trial or period of hearings.
Ako nyine yatina January 2024 men tango min kono ka lokun sabatra kiti yonata ke Bellinzona Switzerland banko kan Ousman Sonko e ba kiti ndikan nun dame ako nyi lokun sabodu ni Switzerland system o kono ajam fate tol fil because tolla trial ga jam fo nyama bari banku dol kamunta Gambia ning sati.
While I do not believe that the trial itself was accessible enough to the Gambian public and to the Gambian civil society organizations, we were still very happy and glad that some Gambian journalists were present in the court and were able to report on what was happening on each court day. So you know that for one, the plaintiffs were heard, some witnesses were heard, and then the defendant was heard as the main evidence that was taken directly by the court.
Na ako ayaji ki fanang ko kiti yonying Gambia nol mang access to walang koy ma abunda yele ba ke Gambia nol katon kiti yonying benu jaman kan wala man ke English kan hotel ka bo Gambia ye tiketo jol wal yele itata Switzerland ye kiti yonying ya noma ye kibarol safia kuala plenty for wala victim on wal fanan bota Gambia fanan tata case nyinto so mo be yalon ne lungolung mone keta court jumale be jumale interview be jumale moy at least waketan wala je.
After the 3 weeks in January, there was a break, and we had to come back to the court again in the first week of March to give our pleadings, so to hold our closing statements, all the plaintiffs, representatives, and also the defense.
Ako biring January lokun sabonying itata court inim victim mol mo be CDR o keje full be sote ko be safe break la sotata mo be funding okay da ke do manding de nata muruna match ko take tol loyal itata yela closing statement wala ko biring case nyimbe ya be kafu nyoma itolla jero munati je ilo kilianol fanna jero munati je itol yo kumol tay fana yadi court.
And also for us as lawyers, of course, in the week in March, where we were only giving, or not only, but we were giving our pleadings, then of course we missed the plaintiffs in the courtroom very much. It was a completely different atmosphere and standing we had in the court without our plaintiffs with us.
Ako January yalong victimol ni March birito lawyer dam mangol burunta ye nata somari ke wala ke la diam labangol taka kije ako ye fenko ya misba ke ye victim of misba ke le katung environment o keta nyamen atmosphere nying a different alak aning among ke kilinti biring victim of fanamantara ye wato min birito dam mambije.
Now we'll turn to the questions I was actually asked to speak to, the prison sentence and the next steps. So sorry for this long introduction to my actual speaking points.
Ako sayang bina kumoto nga nyinin kami na pride ya moto walen ko kit yo nyindun saya teta saya mune be nyato mune atina fane Ousman Sonko ta nyimu wandi ala mang live dia ala ako alial hako boinda e fana introduction o min ka jam fata do manding bara kumaya ta pour moria understand kit yo nyata nya.
But I think it is what I said in the beginning, that different jurisdictions have different cultures and different rules, is relevant to understand these 20 years that Ousman Sonko got in Switzerland.
Ako aya follow ko niya je system or court system of Switzerland Germany make kilinti so fana wale atinna paranyanta explain la mune atinna Ousman Sonko 20 years sort of amal life sort.
Because contrary to Germany, the 20 years Ousman Sonko got was in fact the maximum sentence that the judges in Bellinzona could send or
Germany ye life lady baraka munta Switzerland Bellinzona kono nyin 20 years of an wole sentence timi yalon wole jawyata abeti sabo ko 20 years o ita wonda man di yalano wole da 20 years lady so ye kole min gena kole ata wole wati wol fanandia.
In their oral reasoning of the judgment, the judges themselves said 20 years is not appropriate. If we would look at the case and give a sentencing according to how sentencing in Switzerland works, then they would see themselves obliged to give a sentence of 75 years, approximately, which is not applicable. It's not available. The maximum by law for the crime Ousman Sonko was convicted for is 20 years.
Ako fana lawyer prosecutor wala min yakitiyo tay biring sakero ni yamin di ka foko wala la reason to wala nga wala atina ye Ousman Sonko ya sorong iko ning ayatara kuwal be nyado nyama ya jibe fana asikeno fongo ibe la fila ka Ousman Sonko sorong ko ka foko 75 years bari ate crime ol mi ya long ko nya adama ni nyanta tinyal mi ka Gambia Switzerland banko kanila luwal kono 20 years tamang luwa fana yetol so wala pour yo diala so ni sa nonu ibe jama dila la bari tol fana luwa ye so wala ane 20.
Yeah, so
is the battery, yeah?
yeah, it's the battery actually.
Yeah. Okay.
Why it was charging like this?
They have the projector and the speaker connected here.
Oh,
And they don't have an extension. I'm just
So you need to put it on. Oh. Explanation of me ngamra kumayatale about explain about how trial is done. So maybe right now we'll just go to Antifado Camera. So another explanation minty supposed to be Munen experience in a Swiss court and he also can participate in the Switzerland court, right? As a victim. atela experience mun mu nek anim fa nak affaire we mun na faale na na waranto ay munen na fa pour victim to le participate in case ni so me andi fa do la la discussion okay well many technical issues set up. I'm not sure this will work but yeah so I mean this is that means you come here.
Alhamdulillah, tanto Allah taala maso tanto maso ko konto duro di Gambia beka kam ko konto duro mo ndi mbade bittino ka
This one, yeah? From this.
Alhamdulillah, mfamo baren ki o Solo Sandeng control. Alhamdulillah ka ala tanto no ndiay ala man man ka farika la solo ni ala man man ka farika lu be
It's this thing.
Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin be sorta bitunol le kono Gambia ja a kuba jamale keta kuba jamale fana fota ngal setan antata Swiss fema sije naman ke ko kelote bari ni kuma taw ka fa kuta bolaji ni kuma taw ka fa kuta bolaji ni toro be mol fala baladi mo be mol fala ya rawma so fi ho ma so fonni toro anga alhamdulillah biram fotata Swiss ya welcome ko ya sabari da kendo diana uyu hakilo fana to anto
so you may translate so no diam to so she will Aminata will help with the translation so it's not very audible as well so yes
ya welcome ko yetere dula kendo diana wella dula kendo diana nderen fana botaja allo simoto fionfe dinama ke ndel fana ni toro mi soto ado ala nata bundaye lañe pour anya diama nokren tel biktino min tata min manta kato fo banjul ja abele dabi je baran siyata ma sallahu koto alhamdulillah rabbil alamin man siyata ngalale ba nakelo kela ni Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala
she said when they went to Switzerland they had no other intention but to have to actually be able to avenge some of the things that they went through, some of the discomfort, some of the torture, and basically the bodily harm and other things caused to them.
Rebira kan tata ji anya kito fawlo ndi dum falo minna aduta bake bari ni bandi kew afana singo bambantale singo bambanta bake lu aduta bake len telefon bele jaxalta biru ko kodni kata kala ji ay tel bele jaxaldi nga Swiss la loyal fana mu jambarolete anyo nyini ka ko case be kala kanye se una tan tel murudi so kono una tan lo singola ula kata ko ya kala ala ndata ko code be kala
okay so I can explain the well and co lunga mina gal for the Swiss oh it's supposed to be in English yes she's recounting yeah but Aminata is struggling to hear her and also her Mandinka dialect so I'll take it up so I mean she's explaining about their first experience at the Swiss court there was a false start in her explanation as in they had a glitch which was communicated to her as a sort of an uncertainty but she then asked clarification from the Swiss lawyers who told her that there's just a little technical issue they needed to sort out and then the case will still go on. She said at first she thought it might not go on, which reflected which brought her mind back to the Gambian situation where it was totally uncertain whether we could have a trial like that in the Gambia, which was impossible at the time. And then a situation similar to that was almost happening in Switzerland. But then her fears were averted when the Swiss lawyers did mention to her that, well, there's just a little wait you have to do, and then the trial will go on. So that's like her experience, she's explaining.
Allah na ta ke fana ke antata lo kito nyakli wala antata lo kito nyakli wala kito sorota.
Okay, so the next day the trial started, and she was able to I think mount the witness box and was able to speak.
Fana ala katakol beke de nga alhamdulillah rabbil alamin annal loyal momo ni lan loyal nga anya loyal soto minu nyala ko ye luwalo anya loyal soto minu nyala ko ye londo soto sonko ko kay londo soto le afana luwa mu bandi baleti a osta bak nga Allah taala man so ya no loyal fasa bale Allah ka fasa rok Allah taala man so ya no loyal fasa.
Yes. I can explain what she's trying to say here is that about the representation, that each one of them as plaintiffs was availed a legal rep that guided them through the court process, and also others of the stubbornness in the defense attorney for Mr. Sonko, which he mentioned as a little bit of a challenge for her and her fellow victims, still having the issue in mind whether they're going to have justice or not. But eventually she says she commends the legal reps that were able to make sure that the trial went on and that they were represented well, and she's grateful for that.
Ntelo ya ala tantu kiton to bake ngalo Gambia ko li ala tantu ar victim wol fane ala tantu bayan sita janne aman judgment o soto khani bi judgment man soto na imban koka o malante o man judgment o diana o to Swiss le kata na sabu ni mati fa judgment o diana fo kito keta fa anyi ayi o to amman nyon tawon soto Swiss la fo ku tantu ku jey a to min tuto be ala bulu hal na tru ya soro kar kilina no ante faru kamara wasale baru ka fanyo ko fatu kuta bola nintu oto kuta bola ko mi to ni ku bota je imari nyan tafala alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.
So she is extremely grateful for the fact that this case was able to commence and end, and that it was a success. One thing she is grateful for, and that even if Sonko was only sentenced for 2 days, Fatu says she would have been grateful for that, because that they've had many times that there would not come anything out of this, as in there wouldn't be any solutions, there would not be justice. So for Fatu, having experienced firsthand how, this is not true, and even though it is far away, has actually brought closure to her. And for her, she's actually attained justice, even if Sonko was sentenced for a 2-day imprisonment. That's what she's saying, and she's also mentioned the fact that even though it has always been difficult and uncertain for justice to be attained in the Gambia, the fact that it is happening in another country still supports her pursuit for justice, and she's really happy that it really took place.
Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Solo Sandeng Foundation ko kontondiro mo rendi afanala anin jeyro ula katoko anula losio hani ke bo katoko ni losio mbenga de ngake kilinti min dabe ko ni kono min data ko abela dabiji abemu Gambia biktinolde adam fudita lumi ala ta ko la Solo Sandeng ateni fala Sonko ulle ba nyaato mo be fanje ni fande sono kam konte bele kanyante ji mbenga de katako mi mbambulu kunini kunun ko anya losio ta bictinol kato fo ko rambe be komandi la anya nyomuta anya haklotu nyoto bictino bele contante brio Sonko soro a bele contante fofo mi yala bictino Gambia diwo fana fofo mi yari ban faza bele contante Sonko la soro ndiro ndelo ya soro minna man jutala de na siyata ka tembira diata ngo ya soro minna aman jutala be ba fala alhamdulillah rabbil alamin nuko ko mi ta soto na soto dara amba holo sima sakunda ya barka ma beita na la heroto ala mu fana baraji la ula do fola uya kata
she reiterating the gratitude that victims in the Gambia, especially herself and ones like her, have in the efforts that were put in by both local organizations, the Swiss authorities, as well as Trial International for bringing justice to their doorsteps. I think that's it's quite a milestone to achieve. There's a whole lot of other people who still struggle seeking justice. And what else is more beautiful, what else is more reassuring if we're able not to have such trials happening in the Gambia because of various limitations that we have, but we still are able to bring justice to those that really suffered during the dictatorship, but we're able to find justice for them by holding and bringing to account perpetrators. It doesn't matter where they are. I think that's a great success for all of us. But yes, I'd like to say thank you very much to Auntie Fadu for really standing her ground, having to travel all the way. It was really cold in there then.
I just wanted to know if you're able to ask questions.
Yes, yes, we're definitely able to ask questions. But there's a question and answer session right after the second panel, which is coming up soon. Unless Anina, who's back online, would like to continue her submission. Fatima, we just. Yes, you're on camera. We're trying to get the microphone working. Is the speaker on? Amar, who is the tech guy here?
We wait for the camera.
Right, it's on.
Yes. No, but I was not sure.
Yes, Anina?
Okay, sorry.
You're on now.
So, as I said, the 20 years is the maximum sentence Sonko could have, unfortunately, for the crime. So now, some of you might say, but I read in the newspaper that the federal prosecution asked for life imprisonment, so how come?
Ako pamaya ko niya Ousman Sonko isa ni mwana dia. So muro sa ko ko bari nga dia kay ko balang ko prosecutor life imprisonment. Ya wani ni ka ko court ni sa Ousman Sonko kiti ko na akinya.
So the crime against humanity crime, as it is designed in the Swiss Criminal Code, which is the applicable law of this, has two separate paragraphs.
Crimes against humanity, wala undali Ousman Sonko ina kiti ni kan minna paranga kula na ba sa di ko tunda kula sa ko
If you have related questions, feel free to post them in the Q&A and part of the panel. But just to summarize, paragraph 1 has a maximum prison sentence of 20 years. Paragraph 2 has a maximum. Go ahead. Which is very rare in general. To have a maximum prison sentence for life imprisonment is really only few crimes in the Swiss Criminal Code that allow for more than 20 years.
Ako ingin bunda ko ni pa ni crimes against humanity. Bunda kilmo ikni mo sa ngara ni mo kiti duai mo politiki sanyi mo ye sa na wala. Bunda plan jam ni mo boy na lesit life ni na wala. Dengan life imprisonment aku kiti kan wala ka kino ni ana masih kambi no sanyi mo wala. I get life imprisonment.
So, and while the prosecution, as well as we, the lawyers of the plaintiffs, have asked the court to do the paragraph 1 and 2, so that allows for a prison sentence, the court has decided only to follow paragraph 1, which has, as I said, this maximum prison sentence of 20 years.
Ako hani kabi ito loyal ani prosecution o walang kontrola Gambia lawyer dia wala luta victim wala nya to na ye ni karo ke kidi tela le puri paragraph wala bunda kin ni bunda fla nyo be ka punyo ma ka da follow di moda male use na mi ala ko mo 20 years kamane saga mutal tole ngin karo ke nyawnya bari sembe te to la ka fo be ngine use ka Ousman Sonko kitindala asembo min bulu wali ay tele ko ilo paragraph fo ngine use wala 20 years.
And then when you ask about the next steps, so what is happening now? The judgment was delivered on the 15th of May, and it was delivered with the oral reasoning.
Ako ka sign ka ko mune be keri sign ya kitio teta mune be Ousman Sonko trial ni nyato wala ala kitio ni nyato ako kitio ni teta me karo tiri tani lulo la teta anu fana sentence nyame safero da mane di follow ko ni ben wo ko to sign.
But we do still for us. We are not aware of the detailed reasonings the court will give for their judgment and why they excluded this paragraph 2, for example.
Ako ba jela ko kiti bu ñu fa imang ila reasonable bedi ga la tan loyal ka itandi ko ñini atina nga bunda flom use mambunda fulanya wa use kidio ni nga kuwa lumeni kuwa lekang wale atina ibo batu kane hani bi so switch koto be nyame ne kidio telungo min nama ke ka information be every admin ka.
So in this the next steps are when the oral reasoning. Then you have 10 days to announce that you want to make an appeal.
And you okay to opinion kanam tilit to pour ka sa fe ko mewi ben pla e bolon ko no ka jibe ko ni mantol nya ka continuer la ka ki dolki
the will file appeal, the court will write the written, then you have to wait for the written judgment, and after written judgment you have another 20 days which asks.
So ako sa nite ya sa tatapo alimurong kitip mo to kaji jibe ko nyilin kita mite nya fa Allah tamurun Nigeria wotili tan ko no nite ko fay pareda sa nyin kan safero kala tay use when ipareta then yo ko dial tolla ito loyal na e tilimu wonne soto ko kay to jibe mi yalla ko information o be di la wala kono ka fuko bunda killing bunda folo wala bunda fulanya wala bunda tanjang wala batinna la lafta murun na.
And in the Ousman Sonko case where we are now, we are after the indication of the appeal. So we declared the will of making an appeal, and now we are waiting for the written judgment.
Ako sa Ousman Sonko kiti nyimbe lodula minto sai itoli ila lodula tande kiti bunga ka fuko ila kuruna le ko no ko te ka kudo be 20 years o me men dia la ya boni mina metol nyafa ila tamruna pot le sai saka munte to be kiti bunga le batukan ye kol be sake information o be di galla isaje ko itol panam murungo ko wasina ke baraga damen be temedula be to loya be baturo la pour kiti bunga safero ke ka itandi la ko nyin regional le atina na Ousman Sonko boy ni ngat na man life yala ngat na 20 years o dia.
After receiving the we will then analyze the reasoning as we expect of the appeal.
Ako sa ni witi bunga ni kay to dito la sa ito ni la kilia pinyoma kesa ba court kono ko take wala bat ni la tamurun na court.
And apply is paragraph 2 to be one of the questions we raise in the appeal, but as I said, we have to wait for the written judgment first and analyze the reasoning.
Imprisonment illa Ousman Sonko na wala o fananda tarano ko kon mi yalla ko to loyal bo le murundi la pot kan ka ko pon la tale ale ko jike pour ka al yara kan ka ki de gen jam pala de bari jandi bo kala no ko si ko no to wala kay to di ton le to kon si kay to sa pe ko ka murun ko
I would leave it at that for now. If online or in the room has questions, I'm sure there will be time and possibility to ask. I'm not sure if now or later.
Yeah, akabo ko dan dia mo dan dira wolta kay nga bedame ni mo le ni karo soto doram yani me parela isi ni karo isa afo.
Yeah, so I don't know what you are also with regards to ending explain. Who feel explaining to my own to Ousman Sonko 20 years in the I decided on the appeal mechanism is in India and Indonesia, right? So what I know I want to complain to me are all the Minkuma, I don't know, so but what am I doing? So any cars on me are from Parla Kajalum, Cornwall, and maybe we can just ask questions and we can have get answers before we move on to the next thing. Cheers.
When you ask Mohammed that if there is questions sections, this is a concern and it affects me, my emotional and my mentally and psychologically, because since 2000 we've been fighting for sexual violation in this country, and group of students protest to fight for their fellow student right. According to the lawyer, or according to what I heard from the child, because if we, the students, in 2000, April 10, demonstrated to fight for our fellow student right, and we end up being a victim up to date. Some are still on wheelchair, some are seriously injured. We did not, rape is not charged. We feel like still our right is still violated. And I feel like still those perpetrators will feel like rape will not be charged. And they will feel we will be charged unlawful killing, we will be charged enforced disappearance, but we will be free when it comes to rape. And we all know our culture. When rape happened, we blame the woman, we blame the girl child. That's why a lot of sexual violence victims or survivors are hiding. They don't want to expose themselves because of the stigma. And today, if they heard that Sonko was not charged rape, and all of us bear witness that Sonko did a lot of sexual violence and is not being charged, still, what do you feel about those victims? They will be humiliated. The first day I heard this, I was in my room. I could not sleep. So it definitely broke me down.
I'm just hoping that Banua or Anina there would take note of that, and maybe I don't know how that fits in the appeal. Yeah, but I guess there's a way. One great thing is that we're able to hear this.
Anina, you want to say something about that?
Yes, of course. I was not. I'm very sorry. I have really difficulties to follow that in the room. But first of all, thank you very much for standing, for sharing what you said. And yes, it is true that the court, unfortunately, once again, did not acknowledge the rape charges as part of the systemic violence.
Ako ya baraka bakna majani ambe anila tafolan sa ko di yamula sai kami po bari Ousman Sonko beri di ya boedi bingon nya penkam karun o manke ko di ya boedi dinna ine kala wala dia mara kami po wala ko ton woni ya lo ko mu victim woni ya lo ko woni nya penkam kanye kusi pa boy ay ya do bakele ano patandira ko to la nya to mo mata anu Anina kami po sa wala po ka tuanya yan yung kapal po tuanya rin port ni Switzerland inyapin ka umusul kang ni kada masok ko la time client film mo so ya kami na kumadaman na pula po niya po din.
It is, as I am the lawyer of Binta Jamba, so I'm the legal representative of the woman whose claims were disregarded. In this position, obviously, we are highly enraged about the decision of the court or the judgment of the court. I want to say that, or I want to highlight that the court did not claim that the rapes did not happen. The reason why it was not in the judgment is, as I said before, that the court, in the perception of the court, they say that rape and sexual and gender-based violence was not part of the systemic violence that is contained in crimes against humanity.
Ako atele fana mo lawyer ti mi yalo ko atele lutan bita jamba ye mi yalo ka atele musuko te min Ousman Sonko tumbi ko kanya pe amake ko Swiss court ya fole ko hinya pinkangol manke bari ibe crime ol mi yalo ko ba Ousman Sonko ki indika wala court ya boy ni min la wala crime ol mi yalo ko I keta bake la keta population o bela no Gambia kono bari rate nyi wala nyapin county musol kan imaw dabula dika foko aketa pulati mi yalo ba keta mo bela la mi yalo ka mo bela affect wala yatinna imate dabula kiti teri no men kono bara manke ko mo repon masoto.
And although we provided all the information and all the evidence we could gather on the widespread sexualized and gender-based violence in Gambia, and also the repeated assaults committed by Ousman Sonko. Unfortunately, as in so many cases, sexualized violence and gender-based violence has been individualized, has been taken from the level of the responsibility within the society, within a patriarchal society, and was individualized.
Ako fanang kom nyapin ka ol mi yalo ko Ousman Sonko tumira ka ayakele ka kenken binta jambala anim fana mi yalo ko abi system ko nyama je itol kisi do mbeke ka tol mi peka funyo makadi potla hot ni manna o jibe ka fo ko nyenya pen kan wala ya apply to mo bele ya asodota la kasiya gambia konole ya tale yake mo kili foti ka fo kwa keta ka fo ko bita jambala ya ni musu dantangol bara manke muso bela so mo wata ka dundi problem ko mi yalo ko ya tin ka fo ko ni kata gambia ko bela wala tin matito ya boy dala bari ya tale yake ya personalize wala ka di mo kili ka ke mo kili problem mo tita.
And for me, this is that women across the world have even a longer way to go to justice.
Akai min je nyim ko do ron wala ka ko victimol sa ko muso victimol ye silo be jang fari ba kel ka je ko ye like nyantol so to dunia kon.
What we are doing in coming back to what I said before about the next steps, as I said, we have indicated the appeal, and I said before that we will analyze the written judgment, but I can already say now there is no written judgment in the world that will be able to keep us from making an appeal against the discontinuation of the case with regards to the sexualized and gender-based violence that occurred.
Ako kuma ya fanya men dorong kiti yo ni ya kai to data ya sabe ka di to loyal la be muru na kiti mo kan ko ko la kala le ni boendiro ya kisi ko take ako kuma tan ni dunia mi ya lon ka ba tin na to te muru na ko to ka itandi la ko ni boen ka mi ya lon ko keta Ousman Sonko la tay mo police ko ba te Ousman Sonko kana min ke dolla ima ko kisi ko take ka muru ndi kiti te da te la kan ka jibe ko ya ko jibe ko take.
That's all. Any more questions? Okay, any more questions?
Well, it could be a correction and at the same time to register my concern about reply. Particularly
That's fine. So you lift it up.
right.
No?
It will echo if you put it closer to him.
Okay.
Yeah, just drag it back a bit.
Right.
Turn it on and see. It's not on.
Long press.
Can I?
On.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah.
My name's Abdullah Bujang. I am a focal person for Victim Center. Binta Jambang's case, it's a talk of town. People are very much concerned with sexual and gender-based violence. The student demonstration was sparked with the abuse that the security officers did to the student at the Independence Stadium. Now, having seen the trial in Swiss, that Binta Jamban's case was kind of or make rapists bold and assume that they can be able to get away with the cases previously occurred, or men who has the intention to follow women in their own time. Now, I am appealing. This has happened, and we have understood that they would have to look into the case. I am appealing before the EU, the USAID, UN, for them to help the victim-led organizations to sensitize women. Binta has broken record. There are women here, particularly in the Gambia, who were abused, and they were still keeping quiet with it. Binta Jambang, who stood as a witness against Sonko, people were blaming her now that yes, you are a prosecutor, when Sonko was abusing you, you like it, and it was against her will. VLOs, AVLOs supposed to be supported so that they can abuse that the men are doing to them. They don't want to report about it. They prefer to keep quiet with it. And also for our government to change their policy. When the rapists reported their case to police, the hospital will not attend to them unless and until they are escorted by the police. And this is serious. I have seen a rape victim who reported a matter to the police, who went to the hospital. She was abused. They sent her away with her pain. She went back home, spent the night helplessly, and she went to take shower. All the evidence are going away. The following day, I had to case her, take her to the hospital. The police don't have transportation. Now she was attended, but eventually she was divorced. The husband divorced her, and that's very unfair. It is not her wishes for her to be raped. Government has to look into it. I am appealing for the donor agencies, the stakeholders to support the victim-led organizations so that they can be able to follow these women, talk to them, sensitize them so that they can be able to report their cases to the police, and action has to be taken. I thank you all.
Do we have any other questions? Another year, because
ye mo je jang abena fan suntalo mo siata nyaonya wala nan kal nyininka wala nan ko fo bintala nyimbe wala kono ba jani molbe di amula ka tu tinale tu ngani padi dol bula je folo to nintal setan komi mol min bebe je be fan sun kole yo wala nan te ka jele nyininka
Ousman Sonko.
Ngao moy la dinin kaka ye to nyal fo ko to fana e suisi man sakuna mbe tentula mbe jayila mbiyay bari mbe kuma kilim folaliye alsio moy baak ñinin karo lomde munne be keri fo ñin kitio ate kala no yimban kun kamba ha fo ate kala no jamba
so bimu well bimu ko di wala ko Gambia solaring loi jamal la mi yalo mo be dirakan ni kurusina ke bari fanan usual nimbi dia equivalent crimes against humanity wala international crimes mi yalo mo dol jamal loi jamal bije mang alwal soto waran ko ma anya pero soto mbo kidindul kelanya maybe not alwal dul domestic la ñu ñata internationalized court soto or you have international law mimbela lual kono Gambia du mo soto because akamunda kunungole mbota yaay jamela marolul mi ya lon ko lual mimbe be ni international among o loi international law ama bunya baake comme jamal bije nge soto baten dol man dol domestic so principle sol o yatin nak kiti dol bije pour que kiti ndi jang maybe asikole abara man ko o man trasoto ni ajibe be internationalized court min try kam pour ka soto the special accountability mechanism
wole ma lon kawti pour ku kitiyol jamal waranto tilimbaliya jamal min yalla e keta jang adu nitta pour ka kisi folo kitiyo ena ka kuola wole atina wobe lorin pour ka oke mi atina keta suisa manke jang wolem ko suisse bunda jamal min yalla ko wolle si kiti ndirol ni sotondino wobi jele para mantra gambia foka bare fulanya mari bortala tata je so itin la ngam fosi lual de raja ni fero sota wala ne ka fa universal jurisdiction mol min yalla ko bankol min yalla be banku doldo ibe dula doldo isi hadama dingol kitindino min yalla ko ye tilimbali ake sate doldo e borta ani sa manke no jande bari kitindir kilon wala tilingo min nyanta sota la ko la hani bi wala be sota la je maybe min si soto baliaje wala ko ay trasirim fa wala dan ko no ngaaji bari fana mu kulete mi yalla be futala je le bari
Thank you. Otonjala di amo manchi.
Exactly.
Njala di amo manchi.
Oh yeah, another question for Uncle Fala. Yeah, sorry. Bonua, yes.
Just roughly.
Yes. So what he was explaining, what his happening outside of Gambia and why they're not happening in the Gambia. So my explanation is the absence of Gambia being able to use international jurisdiction. But also some of these crimes are international crimes in nature. And Gambia hasn't domesticated, or we don't have international law principles, and all of those things to get to that position. So what I just explained is the fact that the absence of these enabling laws, also some structures, and then there's ability to do investigations and all that. But also international jurisdiction, that is the reason for international jurisdiction, that other countries are able to try crimes of that nature on behalf of humans. It doesn't matter where they are. So it does not matter that it is, the essence is that it is not happening in the Gambia, but the same essence and intention of justice to be achieved for these crimes is still happening. Yes, that was.
I'm on a meeting. I will call you.
You want to add anything on that?
Yes.
Right. So kudo min fanambije walem ko niko torture. Like for example niko torture saying Prevention and Prohibition of Torture Act totale Gambia. Walem bare 2023 lang also walem serum. So wo torture baby Mosafo Ousman Sonko dabe torture kono waray torture commit le. Anyhow, bari ite o lual tala no mi yalon ko 2023 serum. Wolto o lual keta o lual buka murunno kuma safo si mo kiti ni mi yala e foke 2023 wote kela no so wala adna haninga luadol min soto barakata o lual i mantra no je wato min nani tilimbali albe kekan bari ni baje la Swiss ya loi soto le mi yalon ko tilimbali yake wato wati lalam dan akata ko dro yake hadama ni lo woto si kiti ni nole ni ta futa radio waram ban tol mang loi soto min sin tol ma ko pour ngo follow so wala ngi ECOWAS côté kanying ko mi moy ni ECOWAS ko be minto natram mol minia crime ke modol la sate doldo maybe Gambia si wo fanan ken wala bari abe dame nyin tembo la wol be mu kulle ni minia be do
bugon na ñoka gis nga universal jurisdiction lu tax mu am solo ñoo xamé ne def neen njur ñaay or def neen grave crimes against humanity ni den day daw fu ko gaay def ñu bari den day daw fofu non suñ fa dawé mu melni comme mu fogg rek ñu indi leen fii ñu try leen ñu dem beneen dëkk kon mu nekk ñu fa for free lu gaay def dafa free loolu moo tax universal jurisdiction ne yow soo defee lu bon si beneen dëkk soo duggee si beneen dëkk boo xam ne signé nañ ne ñoom bokk nañ si universal jurisdiction boobu noonu leen laa téye crime boobu noonu doo mun a dox doo mun a escape dëkk yi tamit dëkk ak dëkk mu ngi ñëw waxtaan ñu extradite la ñu indi la ñu try la fii waaye ñun suñ loi yi comme ni nga ko waxee dëgg la moo tax universal jurisdiction am na solo soo leen xoolee tey fu mu nekk ni jox la si am na ñu bari ñoo xam ne daw na su gars yi demee si dëkk boo xam ne signé leen foofu noonu pour universal jurisdiction mu nekk ñu téye leen ñu dem di yóbbu traite comme dëkk yi comme ñoom Switzerland loolu yëpp si seen njëriñ si ñun suñ njëriñ suñ bàyyee loolu rek kon that means ne gars yi suñ dawee jurisdiction of suñ defee crime bi rek ñu ngi free so loolu moo tax mu am
so yeah wala na kuma exactly that's exactly what it is but also the opportunity ngamin sura ja wolen ko Ministry of Justice bijane minimum mansa kundala loi bundata so it all fanambe session do so la next session so e kanyin kol min ni mama sita ni are fana ni kala be mol mako la ay mo yegena senia fana but I need to translate anything else?
So that will bear the highest responsibility.
That's right.
So I'm going to go able to cases.
Yeah.
Can you hear us, guys?
We can hear you. We just have questions we're answering here.
No, I was thinking someone was speaking, so they can change places with your panel where you guys are sitting, because there's more audible for people online.
That is quite inconvenient to keep doing, but I think we're done here with questions and we'll move on to the next panel. Oh, we have one? Yes. No. Yeah, there's actually one.
Okay,
Yes.
I want to ask, in the event that I'm asked to be there, okay, in the event that the Swiss court did not use the second paragraph, then how would we again hold Ousman Sonko accountable for the crimes that he committed? I mean, in the event that the Swiss court did not use the second paragraph, then how else are we going to hold Ousman Sonko responsible for the crimes that he committed?
I think that's a question for Anina. Anina, can you hear us?
I'm very sorry, but I cannot follow at all. So if this was a question for me, you would have to repeat.
Repeat the question. Okay. Am I audible?
Mohammed, I can hear very well. So if you
My question was?
Our question is that in the event where the Swiss authorities do not admit the second paragraph or the argument around the second paragraph that Anina explained, what then are the possibilities for us holding Sonko accountable?
Anina, did you get that? So in the event that when you appeal, the Swiss court does not accept to go with the second paragraph, which is life imprisonment, which you initially prayer. What then would be the next steps with regards to that? Mohammed, could you also translate, or we just do that once? Nyini karo minti wale ko natara nyi lawyer ni kikyo ni ya mburuti ko kona kapu ko ilakale Ousman Sonko sorong life in prison ko by law sorong tanyane kiti bugo man na so wala sai mune bekela Ousman Sonko la ko ka je ko ay kiti jama so to mintan be tani Muhammad.
So it is very difficult to predict the future judgments because the case against Ousman Sonko in Switzerland was the first of its kind. There is no precedent. So there are a lot of questions which will be part of the discussions throughout the proceedings.
Ako Ousman Sonko la ni kikyo ni asiba na manke Switzerland. Nina ma foloti wale atina mota lo na mo fana mune be kikyo ni nyato ni tata port side mune bina kelo wata potake so nata no asiba nene kelo pues ye wata gigre akanya.
So if the court, again, the appeal court, again decides not to apply this paragraph 2, then still the maximum prison sentence the second court could give to Ousman Sonko will be these 20 years.
Natare manna sompul ka life tikiya kala wala ta paragraph la nyaw ko use pul ka asoro wala patake akamu tanya sanyi mo ndo ndo da bare betulaji.
And in Switzerland, if you have how do you say that in English? In Switzerland, after serving 2/3 of the sentence, you have the possibility to get out on parole under specific circumstances, like behavior, but also in this case, migration status-related questions will be relevant, because on top of the 20 years in prison, Ousman Sonko got a 12-year ban of being in Switzerland.
Ako Switzerland na kityo binyame ni sorong fo ye kityo ning ya asafu ko kalante mo ya bila isi safero keno le ka ko ye bule findi prison ko no da me ye karo isi findi no prison ko isabu ko mi yo sabu le sabu ko amari e jika kendo le tandi ko prison ko no wala mari mabonye sakero an Ousman Sonko ko na ya ban 12 years Switzerland kamu kaya bayi na pareta la prison to kore bayi la sate kona sio kana use no kafu ko alemban janya mensai ning ada pae ku talante mo sanyi mo talante mo la sa ko no ko la pela ka fitisai.
But if we assume that there is nothing contradicting or going against the release on parole after 2/3 of the sentence, this means that Ousman Sonko, if he is sentenced to 20 years in prison, could be released after roughly 14 years. So this means in 7 years from now.
Ako sign na fintik parole namin explain Sandeng ibaja ko ni Ousman Sonko ni kumota samba pitit mo taka ko ila pitit la samba nga talante mo be kala sai isa bulan mole bo be kala ko sanyi warawula ka bo sign na ibe Ousman Sonko bulan mole nang aya sara kiti bunga man Sonko ka kiti dola ka sanyi jama dola ka bari ni sanyi mo da mana tutaje sanyi warawula ka bo sign na nayo utapaya la simuruno ku kiti bunga ko na ko sign na talante mo la anu mantra puja ke kan aliambana la sare isa bulan mole ai ko mo be possibility ni si keno mo malo ba be kala fulo para asikeno.
But this is only, of course, the trial in Switzerland and the sentence in Switzerland is only related to the crimes that were tried in Switzerland. For all other crimes that were not part of the case in Switzerland, I cannot make any estimation on any other proceedings that might happen in the future.
Ako baringin be I mean be explain to mo just crime wala timi yalo ko wala nakakni wala la Switzerland bangko kan bari mi yalo ko mala Switzerland bangko Gambia le ma wala du la wol ke Ousman Sonko sama no ko dia correct ka bu ka ñu leke ate def ko no lo to bari Switzerland bangko ka ya mu tada me ya ti ni min abo na ma ko no.
We have another question.
I have a very quick question, if I can ask. Okay.
Yeah, so.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Mena question on yin kala man ma ko la man ka kawato yasi ni mo pour ñun sa mo en kamem fo. Because ya non jang ko kilin en Gambia dingolo. Ntol yanta même fo la Swiss man sa kunda an nimbara la baraka. Barka foko inyanta soro no le life imprisonment comme partout kamara ya ko nyama handi ya soro sanyi kilinde woyen tol kono fala ay wasal al nyanta hakilo to ko kilinde ye men yen tol libaja yem fa ye ko be keda wol be system ko no do ko ngamune noje ndun tol na kelo ke fonga menke man sati nali ye mira nogo ye fani wo sapo do ko na moy ko la mo do le fa jumale ben to nyaaji yo fitala sani altaje ni rako menu ye ku kurmoke ni ol murni system ko no ko de ke be do ko la fol be kon ndun dunya bebe jande ya lonko ite ka mo mem makol bo ka victime del kumboni hani ka bi go makol ka so do jumale ben to nyaaji yo fitala woto dukala alinka na pisani alintol ngaji bendro na ala dali be munekera katu men ye ku ke men jawya ta Ousman Sonko ta wol be system ko no be do ko bi man sakunda be wol len bul sanya tol ka ko
benna nyanto sotola benna nyanto bola min katu men nyante la nyanto dina la wayaje ko kabrim ko be tinyata dabe dunia be nyanta lo la ka ita ni president la ko e mu transitional period president leti ite tamino la sanji lulo la abanta den system o liye falim nsi reform keno sanji te ba espela juma be reform kela bawo atebe sirin abe sulari menna ay tu semboto juma lel batu na semboto wala ay men yettol bude kunum men yem fa kunum men yem ko bondi kunum wala na be dogol so sanji munat de ko never again but it's all over again because of the same people who made the system of Kotu. No, it will let Bamako come. It will let Babasakunda. It will be justice of the Minto, Namaki Ala Makoro. Look at the Munayan in Carrot, Alinka, and your Batanding, Alada, maybe Yampala.
Okay, so I'll do a quick translation of that. So the whole essence of what he's saying is the presence of perpetrators similar to who have similar records or similar affiliations like Sonko, who are now in the system, who for some reason others were asked to be banned, recommended to be banned, and all other different narratives about why that's not happening, why that's not. Okay, and then there's a lot of other people he mentioned as being part of the government, being part of the, whether just in the technical class, but also in the political class and all of that. And for him, it is that we might have people standing in the way of justice when they happen to see themselves in other positions. So that's basically the submission. And also that he lacks optimism in terms of whether we would really, whether they would attain justice in the Gambia in that sort of situation, because there's always situations where you see, let's say, the presidency or having people in positions who were actually adversely mentioned. Affiliating, causing up with them. So that's his concern. It's more of not just a question, but also like a submission to the whole thing, which really is valid to some extent. And maybe partners will continue to help us to, and also the National Human Rights Commission will continue to advise government to do things the right way, at least to prevent re-traumatizing and also the lack of trust and confidence in the government and the system. Yes, which is really true. So I'll take two questions because we have exhausted the time for this panel and we are moving into another panel, which we have panelists already waiting, Sal and the other. So I'll just take two questions, one from and another one from anywhere else. Okay. Another contribution.
Because in told them moving the shadow down the mantle justice. They can told them told 5, 9 and a minute around. Kitio Banda, Madama for the Kitio Banda time. You find duty Sontal. The question of time, it is like a Nawana. I don't know the Fredin Dilan Narota. With a person Mosa. But had single Buzuzo Mandintol. Ning, Fatu Kamara Felimo, Gumute, Brown Jama, Usen Davo, and in Nogai. Now Kitio Kangam for 2 or 3 months, Hanifana song. You go Kitio Banta. You find the identity. There's a Makaso. But Fim Fendeman, Hana Baraka Makaji. Sontol Manjiki, Danka is time, present government can manage more. But the Green more call a Minu Canada. Minu Canton Marco, for the Presola de Dufante, send a cold Sorono. In the end for that, you see a better about Ferry Soron, don't need go in your Catholic uniform. Me and told Butefo, is a from part of my friend, the work ability of Ganonia. I feel you say it's wrong. It's better. Bombukai. Panton in the joke and work and Yawa. So, sign to back down a drum. The degree to the and Nikila, put it out and told Marco. You want to told it, purpose to know that natural present government. I tell you,
yeah, so moving on. Yeah, we'll take another one from moving on. And that's the last one, and we're moving on to, sorry guys, we'll have to move on to the next one.
Especially in one CEO ma konto mbake min keta jufti anding at fois nyarum baby and Kota Minister of Justice Kabarum Control from Trial International, and Swiss Attorney General Chambers, and CSO member Gambia. Parafati, and Nikuya Water, ko Uncle Fallow Sonko Afonyami. Mulaba system of Minu Yaloko, Wolni Yaya Jamil, Misa Kaya Jamila Masakunda. B. President bi ñanta do ñafital bi mo president Adama Barrow ay wo mo leta ki sambana système ko ka victime wal victimize ka mo ñaawal mo tanga am na ñana tala système ko fa ko ka to won ñala am na ñana kila the speaker of the house si du ñay mi lo ta ñam akata ka len ñam wala de the speaker so on and so on even our foreign service ya jamela mo na faringe nyimbala fa warta ani ga war ndol fitimol hani bi man ne nyanto su no mol man kendia wodo Swiss man sa kunda so ro dilo mi ke Ousman Sonko ay nta ko no fa ndata kitiyo la re andum ye bunya mi kentela a horo mo wara baare wodo Swiss man sa kunda ani tra international mba fa na barka ani amuda organisation bi ya arma poro mi nyen dul nya fi dala aka kan campagne la arma ade ki jote na ala barka mo ngom la amma fo fi
so yeah, I let you have a contribution to make.
Yeah,
I'll just come to that.
I'll let her. Yes.
That's okay.
Yes.
Very sure. Okay. Do I need
but
to
that will strictly bring us to the last contribution. We're eating in the order from
okay. So I just wanted to say that the interventions, especially from the victims, are very important. But what I just want to say is that this is the time we need to manage expectations. Because all the times we used to talk about managing expectations for reparations and all of those things, it's like we're telling victims to be patient. But now we have courts to deal with. And the courts are not like the TRRC. When we go there, we have cases. The defendants and the people, any party in the court would have a representative. And that would mean that it's the survival of the fittest. The best man wins. That is how the show is going to be like. So this is the time we really need to manage expectations. I'm saying this because I think we really need to work. The civil society now really need to put so much work in speaking to the victims, telling them about how all of these international cases, the cases that are going to happen in the Gambia, would be like, because it's not going to be something as simple as the TRRC. I would want to go back to the case of the SGBV and why maybe it was waived out, and until today we keep explaining that some of these things, even when we have the hybrid court set up in the Gambia, the SAM set up in the Gambia, there are some cases that will be very difficult to be tried in the courts. So from civil society to know that this is the time to start managing expectations and looking out for ways to explaining in detail the things that the victims need in order to know that the courts might not be as simple as we think it would be. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Sawyer. This is something very difficult that most of the time we struggle to, put into context. But I think it's important
to translate.
Yeah, I think it's very important that we do that because am
I going to have chance? Mohammed?
You will have the
Okay, no, I'm just, because mine is actually a very quick thing. Before, I know, but let me just, and then he just goes ahead.
You can come
fine.
So that I'll
yep, that's okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, yes. What I'm trying to say is, I can explain what I'm going to do expectations or money. Because we are like coming Jambi, Pununkola, maybe coming to the game, maybe not expect the pool. Nimborakia, Ousman Sonko,